Hey guys, how's it going? On this week's video, I want to talk about the difference between feeling and acquiring the appropriate sensory feedback and how it relates to addressing movement dysfunction, chronic muscular tension, and joint pain. All right? So the primary difference between feeling and sensing is that one can be acquired passively and the other it takes a certain level of skill, learned skill. It's not something that we're innately born with. What do I mean by that? Feeling. Feeling could come from you hopping on a leg curl machine, cranking out 20 reps, and then you feel your hamstrings. Or quite literally, if you're just sitting down and I ask you, hey, can you sense your heels? And then you just tap your heels on the ground. You're like, yeah, I can feel my heels. That's not what I'm talking about at all, right? Or if you feel like your lower back is really tight, you feel like your hip range of motion is restricted, you are feeling things, but your inability to put them into a greater context leaves you to misinterpret what those feelings are. Sensorial awareness, sensorial feedback is now you are leveraging the position of your bones through muscular activity to get you to get specific feedback. What the hell does that mean? So let's say you're using your heels. Okay? You're laying on the floor, your heels are up on a bench, you are digging your heels down into the bench, and as a result, you're able to sense your upper hamstrings start to influence and reposition your pelvis and your sacrum. But now you're relying just on hamstrings. What a lot of people will feel, right, is their quads kicking in and helping them out. They will feel increased tension on their medial knee. So they're using distal adductor. They're going to feel calves. They're going to feel toe extensors. They're going to feel even their lumbar spine because they're going to interpret it as a hip bridge. So even if I'm trying to eliminate the management of gravitational forces, right? Because if you're laying on the ground, you don't have to worry about dealing with gravity if you're upright, right? You're just laying on the ground. So gravity is not that big of a deal anymore. It's now more about airflow management, breathing, and the movement of your bones and how you're trying to problem solve that particular task. Because the task is now to move the pelvis, to reorient the pelvis, to lift the pelvis off the ground. But how are you doing it? Most people will have a bunch of different compensatory mechanisms to try to influence this scenario. Right? And this is one of the simplest scenarios that we have because you're laying on the floor, your feet are being supported. I'm not asking you to really move much, I'm asking you to move a piece. And I'm telling you how to go about doing it. But even then, at this very simple and fundamental level, people are going to come up with various compensatory mechanisms to try to accomplish this task. And they're going to feel certain things because they don't know how to acquire feedback from other muscles. They don't know how to acquire hamstrings and adductors and obliques in order to influence bony movement. So that's really what I'm talking about when I ask people to sense specific muscle groups, to sense certain bones moving in a particular way. I need them to be able to influence this movement in a specific way. So if you're not using these things, if you're not using an adductor to orient and rotate your pelvis towards the loaded leg, then you're doing something else. By definition, if you are unable to acquire this sensory feedback, you are doing something else. If you are standing on one leg and you are feeling quads and calves and lumbar, you are not using adductor, hamstrings, heels, obliques. You are not in stance anymore. You're doing something else, even though it may look like it from an external view. Okay? And the reason that this is so important is because we are never really experiencing, or we never really experience anything in real time. All right? We are always on this kind of buffering period. So we're processing what we've experienced a short while ago. All right? This is why prediction models in our brain are so important. Like nature and evolution gave us a mechanism to deal with this lag time in sensorial feedback. Right? So that's why prediction models are so important. If we are unable to acquire this input, then our brain only has limited resources from which to create some of these models. So if we never get to feel our hamstrings doing their job, if we never get to feel our adductors or our obliques doing their job, we can never sense certain experiences. our brain doesn't have access to these inputs in order to create particular patterns, motor skills. Like we can't then utilize hamstrings and adductors to deal with standing on the leg at a very, very simple level. We have to rely on other things. So that's why this is so important. We have to be able to utilize specific skills in order to create specific experiences so that our nervous system can let go of chronic tension, can allow bones to move in an appropriate fashion, so that then we can problem solve other movements without relying on this pattern behavior of excessive extension, excessive external rotation, and abduction. Okay? So it's incredibly important to distinguish between feeling something and sensing something. Because feeling, again, is usually in a very limited context, and it doesn't allow for further integration with the rest of your body. So it's like, yeah, maybe you can feel hamstrings when you're doing a leg curl, but that doesn't mean anything because most of the time when you're in that position, you're in a state of lumbar extension. So your rib cage is translated forward. So forget about shoulder position in that context. Forget about appropriate breathing mechanics in that context. All you're doing is adding localized tension to an area of your body, which is probably going to start tugging and pulling on other areas, because now in this position you're just adding muscular contraction at the level of the hamstring. And if your pelvis is tipped forward, then you're just yanking on those attachment sites. And that's why you might feel that you have tight hamstrings or you have a tight lower back. Okay? So again, this is why it's so important to distinguish the difference between feeling something and acquiring the appropriate sensory input. Right? It's not just about conscious movement. We have to think about how movement is created in the brain and executed in the body. All right? If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. If you have any questions about my coaching services, feel free to check out my website, www.mejorstrength.com. Catch me on Instagram @mejorstrength, and I'll see everybody next Tuesday. Bye.